Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Here to talk all things hockey are your hosts, Brad Crisco, Ryan Hanna, and Evan Lobsinger.
One really annoying thing about the world at large right now is that we can't any longer get sick and just brush it off. We have to live with like the paranoia and the neurosis of whether or not we have COVID. So right now I'm dealing with you guys know, and longtime listeners will know, like regular coughs. My body just picks up coughs and then it never gets rid of them. They usually hang around for 100 days. And I get one the beginning or in winter, and I get one in like late spring. So this one tracks. And like none of the symptoms other than just like the little tickle in the back of my throat like carry with any like COVID symptoms. And like I'm completely fine. And it's been like 2 weeks like this. Like very obviously I don't have it, but I just can't get it out of my skull. And so now I'm going to have to go get a giant swab stuck to the back of my skull so I can feel better and not think I'm about to die.
Yeah, it gave Crystal a nosebleed, so have fun with that.
Oh, did it? Ugh.
Oh, they still doing the brain tickler as the test?
Most of them, yeah. I think this like the
I'll take
ones.
COVID over that. The videos, one of the PGA Tour pros caddies did like a video on Instagram of it, and it like the Q-tip is like 15 inches long.
It's
Zdeno
Chara's hockey stick.
It is.
Yeah,
I don't want that anywhere near my brain.
No. Despite those of you who don't like me as best intents here, you can't get rid of me that easily, unfortunately. Sorry, Brad.
Ah, well.
Well, welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Still around, I'm Ryan Hanna.
I'm Brad Crisco.
And I'm Evan.
Oh, 3 clean name introductions this week. What's gotten into you guys?
I didn't have anything. Usually I base my stupid screen name here or my stupid intro off something relevant that's happened. Nothing interesting has happened. Like nothing. I know everybody's all excited about the hockey's back and that officially being announced, but for the most part, this wasn't anything we didn't know for the last few weeks. So it's like, okay, it's confirmed. Great. We're happy. But I mean, it's not a big to-do.
I was thinking about it earlier because I was thinking about Mike Green as a player and like where he's at now. And we'll get to that, of course. But I actually had to sit and remember about how good Mike Green was when he got traded, like where he was at in terms of like effectiveness on the ice. Like I actually had to sit and think. I was like, man, it's been so long since we've talked about NHL players' performance like now in real time. It's very depressing.
By the way, is that the best return any team's ever got for 2 games of service?
Yes. We'll get to it, but it is like, I don't care what the conditions were. Like, that's a free 4th round pick, baby.
I know. And like, of course, we all should have seen Green opting out coming. I mean, the guy had liver disease 6 months ago. Of course, he's at high risk. Nobody knows if Max Domi is going to play because he's a high risk candidate because of his diabetes. And I think someone was saying like a couple hours ago, 4 Montreal Canadiens players tested positive for COVID. So it's like, oh my God, we are not getting through this, are we?
There's Brad just blowing through our entire notes sheet.
And we're on a Patreon question.
It's called the transition, Ryan. Get on board.
Into which topic? Okay, don't make me laugh this episode. I'm going to cough and it's not cool.
The return to play, Ryan. We have a schedule, Ryan. Players have opted out, Ryan. Things have happened, Ryan. Not that interesting, but they've happened.
Okay. All right, this episode, we're talking about a lot of things. Of course, we're going to return to play. We're at the point where I'm just mocking my own cadence.
We're in the middle of the damn quarantine. Nothing's happened. Let's just go.
So, the NHL put out a memo or a statement or something, and it said, this is paraphrased, that the teams in this play-in tournament, by all effects, are considered to have played in a playoff series.
Oh,
and I was like, okay, whoa, because you've worked long and hard to remind us that these are play-ins, not playoffs, and like all personal feelings about how objectively stupid that is aside, this has big ramifications because there's teams who are technically in play for Lafreniere now because of objectively stupid things, their first-round picks could be moved depending on this, did they make the playoffs or not condition.
I thought that they clarified, though, that this will not count. Basically, it will count as playoff statistics, but towards trades, it will not count, is what I read.
So, yeah, they had to come out after and say, like, no, that we didn't mean for trades, because obviously that would blow the doors wide open. But you can see why it was stupid, because even, I think it was the Canucks, needed confirmation from the league to say, hey, I thought this didn't apply to trades. Does this apply to trades? And then they had to like give the Canucks approval or confirmation back. And then I think the Canucks ended up relaying that to Thomas Drance, who was trying to find out. So first of all, dumb. Secondly, don't put out a statement that says these teams are considered to have played in a playoff series and then not include the words for the sole purpose of statistics. I'm pretty sure that line, like that statement didn't have that in it. Cause I read it a lot of times and I went, okay, because this Minnesota just doubled their chances at getting Lafreniere. Like, this is huge. This is massively important. The New Jersey Devils are all of a sudden back in play. But then the NHL backtracked and said, oh no, it's play-ins for trades, but playoffs for stats, because we're the NHL and all we know how to do is trip over our own feet. Fantastically so.
Like, I get it. It's not going to be a simple answer. These are weird times. Everything's going to be weird. But the NHL has this habit of being half pregnant on everything. It's not rocket science here. Okay, it's a play-in. This is essentially the end of your regular season. If you want to call it that, classify them as regular season games. Add, Austin Matthews' goal total, for example, to it. Is he going to have an advantage to get the Rocket Richard over Ovechkin and Pasternak because their team's advanced? Sure. Who cares? Like, in reality, that doesn't matter that much other than some performance bonuses, but players also get playoff performance bonuses. So it doesn't matter that much. And you could say, oh, well, is that fair for Pasternak and Ovechkin? Well, it's not fair when players get injured either. So, I mean, it just balances. It's regular season or it's playoffs. And the NHL is the one league on the face of the earth that can make it both.
Yep. It's like you said, Brad, these trying times, TM, but like as much as you can, NHL, at least try to pick a lane.
It's Schrodinger's format. It is both the playoffs and the regular season. Just depends.
It seriously is.
It's just playoffs with air quotations around them. That's what these are.
Dr. Evil.
Playoffs.
Oh man, Austin Powers references are going out, eh? Like I made that to someone. I made an Austin Powers reference to someone. This was like a few months back, and they looked at me like, I was like, really? You don't get the Dr. Evil? Nothing? No? Cool. No, that's a sad day. So since last episode, the predictable has happened, which is that the CBA that was agreed to by the NHL and the NHLPA was ratified by all voting members of the NHLPA with overwhelming positive, or votes in affirmation of it. I think it was like 79% of NHL members voted yes. So that was, again, to be expected because neither the owners or the players really have the opportunity here to spend time in the mud slinging shit at each other because the game is at risk because of these trying times TM. So good news for us is that we get how many more years of labor peace? Is it 6 with no lockout?
Sure, we'll go with that. Why not? 2
Olympics. There were some minor things offered on both sides. The league and the players are going to suffer financially for a while, but then again, you have to keep it in your own mind how much you care about millionaires or billionaires. The fact of the matter is hockey has been guaranteed in the only way they possibly could. So that's been ratified, signed, and sealed. The CBA is extended. And I actually got this question. I guess we didn't talk about it. No mention and no inclusion at all of compliance buyouts. That very well may have been a thing if the league just didn't lose billions upon billions of dollars in revenue, but that's not something that they'll be doing this time around. So
here's a question for you. Immediately as a Red Wings fan, when you hear no compliance buyouts, that's bad. But then you think about it more. That's good because it screws other teams too, which is when they're going to come to dump these bad contracts on us. And thus, this is how we're going to get the extra assets that we talked about so much last episode. So even though we'll be stuck with Abdelkader and Nielsen a lot longer than we would like to, it's still probably a net positive for the Red Wings.
Yeah, the Louis Eriksons stay on Vancouver. The Sutters stay on Vancouver. All these bad contracts from around the league, they don't get to be just jettisoned off and have these teams, it's kind of unfair to say, but like continue to exist in their cap situation consequence free. I don't like saying consequence free because these GMs sign these contracts with like a very reasonable projection of what the cap would be 1 year out from now, 3 years out from now, 5 years out from now. And then, I mean, the world ended. But still, huge bonus for Detroit. So yeah, of course, you'd want to get rid of Abdelkader or Nielsen, but if you're able to clear up a like huge amount of cap space, like Yzerman and Holland before him, to give credit, have done with these expiring contracts, you can afford to hang on to the Abdelkader and the Nielsens throughout the rest of your rebuild. Although Abdelkader may actually last longer than the rebuild, ambitiously.
Ideally.
Yeah, ideally, because that means the Red Wings got their shit together. So, Cap's back The CBA is confirmed. Hockey is coming back, and return to play was a big part of it. The penalty-free opt-out for return to play has come into effect, and we've seen that start to roll in. I have a list here of all the players who have decided to opt out of returning to the NHL's play-in tournament / playoffs, even for, I think there was one. Yeah, there's a Boston Bruin on here, so not necessarily just the play-ins. And this has been interesting because not any massive names yet, but teams have to deal with this. So we have Carl Alzner from Montreal.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but was he not in Laval anyways? So he just said, well, screw you guys. I'm going home.
Yeah, essentially. Steven Kampfer from Boston, the defenseman, right? Defenseman?
Yep.
Yeah. Mike Green from Edmonton.
Yeah, obviously he is likely immunocompromised in some capacity. And I believe his daughter is as well. I think his baby had some health problems that I saw on his Instagram 6 or so months ago. So that probably was the biggest reason, truthfully, why he opted out.
Yeah. Roman Polak, which we knew about a long time ago. Sven Barshy, which is another one who's he was more or less in Utica than Vancouver this year. And Travis Hamonic in Calgary, which is a pretty significant one, honestly.
Yeah, he's probably the most significant one so far that is not going.
And I just want to put this out there now. There will be no kind of judgment or breakdown of these players' reasoning for this. That's not necessary. I will never have an ounce of criticism for a player who decides to opt out during this, and this for the sake of their own safety or their family's safety or their peace of mind, even if it's that. So that's not what this is. Just instead discussing what this is, the players that are opting out.
Oh, but there'll be 400 mouth breathers on Twitter going, oh my God, he's not a team player. Like if Max Domi doesn't opt out, some guy from Laval will be like, oh, he doesn't even want to win. How could he not want to win the Stanley Cup going in there as a 24th seed, playing Sidney Crosby and the Pittsburgh Penguins, and he has diabetes, so if he catches it, he'll probably die, but not NHL material. You know it's going to happen, Miss Dave 210365543 on Twitter with an my.
I made that very stupid joke on Twitter about the Red Wings not they opted out of the play-ins, and then I got the like Bill 17 numbers after it saying Red Wings suck. They wouldn't have made it anyways. Like, yeah, hell yeah, Bill.
That was
You're right.
You're
right.
I have the McBain in front of the brick wall from The Simpsons image saved on my phone, and I get so much use out of it. It's like, the Red Wings have opted out of the playoffs. Well, yeah, they weren't going to make it. That's the joke.
Red Wings suck. Go Hawks. Thank you, Dale 799423559. Is that a social insurance number, Dale? Thank you for that. Bot.
Hey, Dale, just a quick question. What's your mother's maiden name?
It's also Dale, funny enough. It's just a family of Dales. Related to Anton Lundale. I don't like that. I'm crossing over a couple of podcast memes there.
Nope.
Like that, Evan? Did that one for you.
Thank you.
Evan is not. I told Evan that I would be.
I moved on from my Antel Lundale repetition joke.
What's the next one? We have to wait and see.
I don't know yet.
When's our next mock draft?
Magicians don't give away how they come up with their magic tricks
It's
or
not
their
like
magic tricks.
You're not a content creator or anything. Do you consider yourself a content creator?
No, not at all. I consider myself an amateur golfer and a wandering lost soul.
I've never met anyone who wanders less than you. You're just so content to sit in one place.
I'm a big fan of routine.
Brad wanders. I wander. Like I pace. You just sit. You're just happy as a clam.
Yep.
I don't wander. I'm chasing someone usually. Hey,
Two
put
little
that
people.
down. Mika, get back in the house.
I always ask Brad stories about the kids because A, I miss them, and B, because they're hysterical. Because he's like, oh yeah, today was a rough one. Mika's having a meltdown, and Hank was just being an asshole. And like just the thought of like a 7 month, how old is he now? 8 months. Like he's like an 8-month-old just being an asshole. It's just hysterical to me. Man, that kid is huge.
Oh yeah, thick with 2 C's. He's a big boy.
I ordered the onesie and I picked the biggest, like the oldest age range because I'm like, he's going to be there like next month in terms of size.
He's just upgraded to 12-month onesies and sleepers.
Hey, do you have enough money for groceries? What's that kid eating?
Don't worry, he's already sponsored by Alabama. They're trying to get him in early.
He's just eating those that weight gainer powder that you get at Popeyes. That's all he eats at this point.
Brad, you better hope he has your brains. That way he doesn't have to feel bad about going into football because all the knocks to the head won't really do much damage.
Oh,
It'll make a ton of money.
No, but seriously, he's going to be like 6'7", 220 pounds. If I can teach this kid to skate and crash the net, we're going to be rich.
You understand that when that kid is like of an age where he can start to understand humor, Evan and I are just going to relentlessly co-opt him and his humor into making fun of his dad who's shorter than him.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah, that's probably going to happen already. He already does it in his own way. He's discovered yelling. Not that he's upset. He'll just sit there, stare at you and go, ah!
Is he my cat?
Yeah, he's Fred. He just yells and we don't know why.
Have you seen Hank and Fred in the same room?
No.
No.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't help that I don't know Evan's. I always forget Evan's cat's actual name.
Alpha.
So I always mix. Yeah, Alfie. Don't know why you do that. Back to opt-outs. Mike Green, like you mentioned, Brad, opted out. So the Red Wings, the pick that they get in exchange for Mike Green is confirmed to be a 4th-round pick. It would have been upgraded to a 3rd if Edmonton made it to the conference finals and played in Green played in 50% of the games. That won't be the case now, so it's confirmed a 4th. I saw some people upset about that, and all I can say is, look, Steve Yzerman got a 4th-round pick for 2 games worth of a player. Sure, it's not a 3rd, but what an amazing return on investment.
4th-round pick in a deep draft. Odds are it won't be anybody relevant, but it could be.
It's an extra swing. Is it anything to write home about? No. Tiny victory? Absolutely.
And it could be an asset for a trade-up because in the mock draft that we did with Max and Prashant, that was actually the pick I threw in to get up and get Lucas Reichel while we were doing the mock.
Yeah.
By the way,
Yeah,
after
it was.
we did that before Bob McKenzie's rankings, and y'all judged me for how little I jumped up to get him, and then McKenzie's rankings came out, and Reichel was like 10 spots ahead of where I picked him.
I know. That was the first thing I thought when I think he was at 19. I was like, oh, Brad's going to be smug about that.
Oh, yeah.
I actually say that quite a bit. Like, frick, Brad's going to like that. Shit. Hate that.
No, I'm not happy that McKenzie ended up there, because it means the Red Wings don't have a chance at getting him.
Did you guys see the schedule that's been going around about return to play?
Yeah, well,
Like-
if you sit down and start watching hockey at noon, you could literally not move for, I think it's 11 hours and watch hockey straight. Like, I hate the playing round. I hate how the draft lottery ruined it for me. But on my days off, you're joking if you think I'm not sitting there for 11 hours and watching this.
I'm just so excited to see hockey again. We get to talk about players and how well they played and results from games. Oh man.
We get to have that existential crisis of, do we want the Leafs to win or lose? Because we don't know.
Yeah, this playing round is going to have so much intensity to it just because of the Lafreniere lottery.
Oh, yeah. Teams are fighting for the bottom here.
And the last thing about the opt-outs, you mentioned Max Domi. Though the deadline was like, I think today at 5 or something like that, the Canadians and Max Domi agreed to a 7-day extension on his decision. It's very obvious that he wants to return, but he wants to evaluate the situation first before making any kind of commitment. So it's good that the team said, yeah, let's handle this smart and let's not force a decision right now. So they're going to wait another 7 days. And consequently, multiple Montreal Canadiens have tested positive. Like 4 of them. So
yeah, Max, sit this one out, man. That Montreal may upset a round or two, but they're not going to the Cup, buddy. Don't kill yourself, because half your teammates were probably on St. Catherine Street, Montreal, contracting COVID and possibly other diseases. Just sit it out. Actually, you know what's weird though? All this talk's been about Max Domi, whether he's going or not. Correct me if I'm wrong. Capo Caco has diabetes as well, does he not? And I've heard nothing of him if he's playing or not. Either.
I don't presume to know everything about these players' conditions, how well it's managed, the severity of whatever underlying chronic condition they have, and that's not something I like to speculate about. The general notion I go with is like Domi's the conversation that's coming up. He's the one that's talking about it publicly. The team's talking about it publicly. I don't know. Didn't Capo Caco like burn? Was he injured at the end of this season or the end of the season?
That was years ago. I can't remember that.
No kidding.
Anyways, it'll be an interesting week to see how that levels out. But for the most part, I think the resounding option here has been that most players are almost universally all the players are coming back. Like 4 or 5 might sit it out, but it's not really a significant number.
Just while I was talking about years ago, you want to hear something that dawned on me today? You remember how many times during this quarantine we've joked about when Robbie Fabry blew Mrazek up?
Yeah.
That was the last game they played.
Yeah.
Wow.
That feels like it was 5 years ago.
That was such a fun game, too.
They lost. But...
Yeah, who cares? I saw Robbie Fabry just say, oh, whatever, and just blow up Peter Mrazek. We saw Tyler Bertuzzi drag 2 Carolina Hurricanes players on their backs on the ice.
We saw Anthony Mantha kill a guy inadvertently.
Oh, man. Can't believe he avoided jail time on that one. That's easily the worst call of the year. Anyways, over to the Red Wings. So, of course, we're going to keep talking about possible cap targets for them, but a I would say cap target in terms of like they're taking on a bad contract, but possibly one where they can get him at a discount. Brock Boeser is rumored to be on the market to create cap space for the Vancouver Canucks.
So I got to clarify one thing, because I was one of the first ones to go on Twitter and be like, hey, now here, because everybody tweets at me 1,000,001 trade scenarios that don't make any sense. I see Boeser on the market, who's only, 23, 24 years old. He was in the same draft as Svechnikov. And I go, hey, here's a trade target that could actually make sense. And I had 3 types of people responding to me. 1, yeah, that'd be great. 2, look at all these analytics that say he's not as good as he actually is. And 3, we don't have anything for him. To the third group of we don't have anything to trade for him. Yes, we do. What you mean is we don't have anybody you're willing to trade for him, because our prospect system's pretty loaded, and Vancouver would be offloading him to gain cap space, meaning they're probably not taking a roster player in return. So we have the ammo. It's just whether or not you want to. The analytics group is saying this guy is not a franchise changer. He's a good second liner at best. Well, he makes $5.8 million for the next 2 and is a restricted free agent after that. He's getting paid like a good second liner. So, okay, that's fine with me as long as we give up a second liner's worth of assets. Sure, I will argue his ceiling is higher than that because he's battled some injuries. The counter argument against me would be, well, those injuries might limit him. Fair, but depending on the cost, worth the risk.
He had that brutal hip injury, right?
I believe so, yeah. And I mean, he's a right shot lethal goal scorer. We've been talking about drafting guys like Tyson Forster because they could fill that role or Alex Holtz on the left side of that power play. Brock Boeser solves that problem. You could then address a more immediate need in the draft or whatever you want. So then you throw in the big caveat to this. Well, what would Brock Boeser cost? I would say a really good prospect and probably a pretty good pick. You're probably looking at not necessarily from this draft, but the Red Wings 2nd round pick, which would be pretty damn close to 32. And you're probably giving up a Veleno or I don't know, pick your good prospect here that isn't Seider or whoever they pick this year. But how much does that price come down if Louis Eriksson comes back as well?
There it is. So here's an opportunity, like Brad alluded to there, which is you generally aren't going to try to go out and acquire good players right now because your team is A, so far out from being good, and B, you want to save that cap space to try and leverage teams and to give you great assets in exchange for alleviating their financial concerns. But Brock Boeser could be a foundational piece, and he's young enough where it would make sense. Even if this rebuild takes 4 more years, it still puts him in a pretty healthy amount of prime level productive years, or at least close enough to it where it would be worthwhile. The Red Wings have the cap space to retain him. And let's be real, a consistently good second liner with first line upside is easily one of Detroit's best players.
Yeah. Brock Boeser is at worst 3rd best player on this team right now.
Yeah. If you get a Brock Boeser type and then you get another good center, say in this draft or through some other means, next draft or whatever, that top 6 on the Red Wings is looking really healthy. And you got him at a reduced rate because, like Brad is saying, you take on, instead of giving them a Veleno or instead of giving them a 2nd round pick, you can knock down the value, say from a Veleno to a Berggren or a 2nd round pick to a 4th round pick. And you also take on Louis Eriksson. That's not the actual value weight there of those two things. I'm just kind of giving you the general concept. This is that rare scenario where you could add a player that could help your team now, and it would make sense because you wouldn't be compromising your ability to leverage your cap space to improve in the player bucket, like we talked about in the past. So it's a little bit of hypocrisy from us because everyone has given us a million scenarios where you're like, can we acquire this good player, this good player? And we're just like, nah, yeah, but does it really make sense? This is one where it's that little unicorn where it fits all of those criteria.
And if you're sitting here like I was when this news broke and go, well, why is Vancouver even considering trading Brock Boeser? I thought that as well. And I know Jim Benning does some weird things because he's paying he might be paying his 4th line more than our 4th line, which is really saying something. So I went around to Canucks Twitter, Canucks beat reporters, yada, 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 figure it out and find all the reasons I could as to why this might be happening. And then getting the obvious, oh my God, they're in cap hell and have so many bad contracts out of the way. I'm like, yeah, but he only makes 5.8. Surely that can't be the biggest problem on the team. And then the logic I saw was, well, Quinn Hughes and Elias Pettersson are going to need new contracts soon. They're getting a big raise. Okay, I get it. They'd like to keep Jakob Markstrom. Yeah, okay. Well, I mean, you got Demko, but sure, Markstrom is a dark horse Hart candidate this year for the season he had. Okay, I'll give you that. And the Canucks Jim Benning has said they would really like to keep Tyler Toffoli. You know Tyler Toffoli, a slightly less older version of Brock Boeser. Oh, Jim Benning. I mean, if you want to go through the hilarity, just look at what Jay Beagle and Brandon Sutter and Antoine Roussel and Louis Eriksson are making, and then getting rid of Brock Boeser is the solution. It is just, if you really want to keep Tyler Toffoli, here's your answer. Keep Tyler Toffoli, but rename him Brock Boeser because he's younger and better.
This is it's one of those topics where I can't believe it's divisive because it just happens time and time again to these teams. Red Wings fans know it because it happened with Ken Holland and the Red Wings, and that's why we're in the hole we're in now. when Vancouver signed these contracts, when they brought on Antoine Roussel and Jay Beagle, I believe those were the same summer, right?
Yes.
$3
They
million.
had a few head scratchers.
Yeah, and we talked about it on this podcast, and we actually had the Vancouver fans who somehow got wind of it, which is always a good time, and Red Wings fans telling us, like, it's not that bad, guys. Like, it's not that bad. Like, these players play an important role. And it's just like, look, nobody's saying they're bad players or they don't have value to a team, but this is where it burns you because you're the Vancouver Canucks. You've struck gold more than once with Pettersson and Quinn Hughes, and credit to their scouting team for sure. Hell yeah. You guys deserve it. But you have now avoided the pitfall of a terrible rebuild. You just have to be able to make it out of this and pay those players and build around them. And all of a sudden you're talking about trading what should be one of your core, if not ancillary to your core pieces in Brock Boeser, because you're paying $3 million to Jay Beagle, $3 million to Antoine Roussel, $3.75 to Tanner Pearson, $4.375 to Brandon Sutter, and $6 million to Louis Eriksson.
Oops.
Don't forget about Tyler Myers.
Oh,
and don't forget Michael Furland, $3.5 million. You got to scroll all the way down to the long-term injured reserve to remember that one too. He is like their bottom six forwards, literally average over $3.5 million per player. Per player. It's like we laugh about Nielsen and Abdelkader being down there, but we have enough guys in our bottom six that are young that don't make that much. So like Christopher N makes nothing. Adam Ernie, Brendan Perlini, but made nothing. So it's like, yeah, we have some bad contracts. Literally Vancouver's entire bottom six is terrible, overpaid. And now the rumors going around that Brock Boeser, unloading Brock Boeser is the solution. And out of all these players too, like, oh my God. And let's not forget that it was just last season the Vancouver Canucks put Quinn Hughes into a couple meaningless games at the end of the season to burn the first year of his DLC. So his next contract is now due up sooner because they were hoping to save money. And then Quinn Hughes goes and smashes every rookie defensive record they've had. Oops. So not only are you not getting a discount, that not discount you're getting is coming up sooner. So for all the people who are upset we didn't defer Zadina's contract, it does backfire sometimes, guys.
The Tyler Myers thing blows my mind because he played terrible hockey leading up to his free agency. On the ice, like the eye test, underlying numbers, everything was just like, hey, maybe Tyler Myers isn't worth $6 million for a lot of years. And Jim Benning was like, hey, come live in Vancouver and make a ton of money at 30 years, starting at 30 years old, and then just play like crap for us, please. I actually don't even know how he's been in Vancouver, but it's not been $6 million over the next several years. Good.
4 more years after this season. But to be fair, you have to make $6 million a year just to be able to afford a townhouse in Vancouver.
Yeah, that's very true. And these are US dollars, so it does go a longer way for the Canadian.
Oh, he might get a semi.
Teams.
They might get that 2-bedroom and a den.
Ooh, and a den. Tyler.
And a den.
This is why we scream, don't overpay depth. And I'm going to make one of those stupid statements where it's like, if the team wasn't as good, they wouldn't be as good. But let's pretend the Vancouver Canucks didn't strike gold with Pettersson and Hughes and they got slightly worse or like not superstar level players from those drafts. Make no mistake, this would be a bottom feeding team. They have good pieces, of course, but without an insane return on value for the draft picks that they had, this team is not built like a winner. They are being dragged forward by the superstars, which is great. Good for them. Like, not every team is going to be built like the model franchise, but the reality of the situation is they have more albatross contracts than they can possibly do anything with. And Jim Benning is in a tough spot without a proven history of not repeatedly making the same mistake.
Vancouver gives us Red Wings fans hope because they are bogged down with a million bad contracts on depth players, have fallen back in every draft lottery they've participated in, but because of just stupid luck, hit a few superstars in the pick 5 range. So maybe, just maybe, That's us this year at pick 4.
Are we the Vancouver Canucks?
I'll do it. I'll do it. I'll raise our home prices and cost of living here just for that.
If you can guarantee us an Elias Pettersson level of player at 4 in this draft, you can change our colors to green and blue for all I care.
Yeah, that's fine. Anyways, so it gives Detroit hope for that reason, or it's good for Detroit for the purpose of giving us hope, and also because now Steve Yzerman can prey on a very desperate Jim Benning, who is in need of unloading. He really needs to get rid of Brock Boeser. His shooting talent. I saw Boeser's underlying numbers, and yeah, they're not phenomenal, but at the same time, like you said, like injuries have hampered him, and he, no matter how you cut it, he shoots at a disproportionately high level. Like he is a very good shooter, and you cannot have enough goal scorers on any team. But if you're going to add a good second liner to this Red Wings team, and they're a great shooter, amazing. You no longer have to rely solely on Mantha and then Zadina in the future.
Yeah, and I mean, Brock Boeser, again, can't stress this enough, is 23 years old. There is reason to believe there is at least room for some improvement as to what he is right now.
All right, let's head over to our prospect profile. We decided to pull a little bit of a fun one for you guys here and pick a higher end prospect to talk about. And this is one that I think is very much in the conversation, whether some people like it or not, and a very intriguing one. And I think is a player who could rise. And most notably is a player who I have to constantly remind myself, their name isn't Raymond Holtz from Brooklyn Nine-Nine. It is Alexander Holtz. So the, phenomenal shooter in this draft. That is who we'll be doing for a prospect profile today. Brad, take it away.
Alex Holtz. The Lucas Raymond situation, but in Djurgården. Playing small role, had actually good numbers. He got a bit more ice time than Raymond did, and thus put up a bit better numbers, got a lot of power play time. We just spent a lot of time talking about Brock Boeser, so we could overlap a lot of that conversation with Alex Holtz, because right-handed shot, elite shooter, all right skater. Although I think Alex Holtz, because his shot's so good, gets sold short on his playmaking ability. He actually is a very skilled player and can play a skill game in the offensive zone and off the cycle. Obviously, when everything's going his way, that's not what he's doing, because people are getting him the puck to shoot, but he can absolutely work it the other way. Like most 18-year-old high-scoring forwards in a pro league, his defensive game leaves a little to be desired. I don't think there's 3 forward prospects in this draft that we can say, oh yeah, their defensive game's great. But yeah, I like him. He wouldn't be my pick at 4, but I actually wouldn't be that upset if he was, because he does fill a direct need, assuming we don't trade for Brock Boeser, because that would render that point moot. But he is in play, not just because of the need at the Red Wings, but because depending who you talk to, he's a top 5 talent. I think I've got him at 7 or 8 on my board right now, so he's not far off.
He'd be, I think, in a lot of weaker drafts, Holtz would be a guy you're talking about at 2nd or 3rd. We talk about the kind of player you want with a top end pick in the 1st round is someone who has elite skill sets. This guy's an elite shooter. Likely the best shooter in the draft. He can shoot from a lot of different spots on the ice. He's not kind of tied down to one spot. And the thing is, he puts himself in the right position for those shots. Not only is his shot amazing, he knows how to put himself in the right position to get the perfect shot. Extremely intelligent offensive player as well. His hands are phenomenal. He's really not too shabby at all playmaking either. As in terms of a dual threat, if he learns how to kind of lean on that a little bit more and throw defensive coverage a little bit, or make goalies and players guess whether or not he's going to backhand sauce the puck or take a quick snapshot, that's an elite offensive threat. Like you mentioned, not a lot to be said about his defensive game, but decent skater. I have no problems with his skating either. He's the kind of guy where, if the Red Wings drafted him, I would say, yeah, that wasn't who I thought it was going to go, but I'm pumped about this elite shot on this team.
Yeah, you can never be upset by someone who's just naturally a good goal scorer. And by all rights, he has all the tools to score goals at the NHL level. So if you need anything more certain than that. I don't think it could really happen from a goal scoring perspective, but probably not who I'd have at 4. So that's a little high, but some team's going to really, really like him in the top 10.
My hot take is I want the Red Wings. If not, Raymond or Rossi or whoever we end up preferring, I would prefer Holtz over Drysdale for the Red Wings.
I could see that argument. I don't know if I'm there yet, but yeah, I could see it because talent-wise, I'm not too far off between Drysdale and Holtz. Just looking through his elite prospects page here as it is, I think I found my favorite stat split from any prospect this year. In 35 games with Djurgården in the SHL this season, he had 16 points, 9 goals, and 7 assists. In 3 games in the Super Elite Junior League, he had 7 goals, 2 assists for 9 points. So they probably said he was in junior for a bit. Just made a statement and kind of, I imagine, just called the GM of Djurgården on FaceTime and just stared at him after his third game there.
The Holtz, I think, is one of those players who could jump up. I believe the Swedish Elite League is playing some games, or they're hoping to play some games before the NHL draft starts. It's about a month's worth of games.
Not quite, but close to it.
So we're likely, or at least projected, we don't know how things are going to shake out, obviously, but we're going to see Raymond Holtz, Alex Holtz, and Lucas Raymond. These guys are going to get some more ice time, and it could be some more prominent ice time. It's not going to be a huge sample size, but it might just be enough to stir the pot. As we know with NHL drafts, things get silly, and with NHL drafts where you don't have a combine, you don't have, a big swath of games that scouts would have wanted to use for data and for decision making. And then you're going to have some exposure bias. Like if we're only watching the DEL and the Swedish league, you're going to see Stützle jump up probably in terms of people's rankings. You're going to see Raymond jump up. You're going to see Holtz jump up. Like that's kind of how it works. And even it happens for us, right? Like we watch a player more and more, and we naturally move him up the rankings, and it turns out we were just watching him more. So I don't know. I would not be surprised to see Holtz jump up. I don't think there's a realistic chance of Holtz jumping into the top 3. I think Lucas Raymond is probably the most likely outsider to jump into the top 3 in my mind, but don't be shocked if he goes to Detroit. Don't be shocked if he goes 5th. Who's drafting after Detroit?
Ottawa.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Ottawa has 3 and 5. That to have an elite shooter, like the highest graded shooter in the draft, that is worth so much. It is the single most important talent. A lot of scouts will tell you, and a lot of GMs, a lot of coaches, is they want goal scorers. They want guys to put the puck in the net. That's what counts at the end of the day. So
if Ottawa wanted to get weird, they could reunite the Terror Twins. They could have Raymond Holtz. Ottawa's the one team that could do it. And as much as that would suck to have in our division, I actually encourage them to do it. That would be great.
I would forgive Ottawa for inflicting Eugene Melnyk upon us if they gave us Raymond Holtz. I'll say it right now. And I know we have some Ottawa fans who listen, and they might be shaking their heads, but look, it's the small victories. That's what you have to take.
And honestly, my opinion of that has nothing to do with the fact that it means Byfield or Stützle would slip to the Like, honestly, it doesn't.
Yeah, no, we're not.
Maybe.
But maybe.
It doesn't hurt.
Okay. We are going to, for the sake of my throat here, move over to overtime, unless either of you have any quick hits you want to throw in there.
It's after 10 p.m. I absolutely do not.
I've actually got a 12-page essay I wanted to read on air
Evan,
now.
If you ever have a 12-page essay on air, I promise you I will mute myself and mute Brad, and you can have as much airtime as you want.
That will have to be a Patreon exclusive episode.
Patrons, would you like an Evan-only Patreon exclusive episode? I would love that, actually.
I don't know what I'll talk about. Maybe I'll just turn the mic on and start talking about anything.
We've joked about it for a while. We should get one of those chess clocks, and like on one side it says like 30 minutes, and on the other side it says 5 minutes. And me and Brad at most can add up to 5, and by the end you have to exhaust your entire 30, Evan.
Oh no.
Yeah.
That's my worst nightmare.
Welcome to the show. All right, we're going to move over to overtime here, and we're going to start off with Patreon. Our Patreon supporters are the reason we are able to continue this show, especially during quarantine. So thank you all so much. Thank your local friendly Winged Wheel podcast patron. We're going to start with Drunky the Dwarf. It says, Mike Green opted out. How does that impact the 2 seconds we got from Edmonton? The 2 seconds were for Athanasiou.
Correct.
So that doesn't affect them, but it does affect the fourth not becoming a third.
And there are no conditions on those seconds at all.
The real question is, after finishing the Russian 5 book and the Lidstrom book all in a few days, I would like to know which one of the Russian 5 would you have liked to see play their full career here. This is pretty tricky, knowing Konstantinov was one of the best defensemen before he got hurt. I feel like you'll choose Fedorov because the dude was one of the best in the league some years. Kozlov was sick, and so was Larionov. But anyways, any way you pick, they're all incredible.
I'll go with Konstantinov because we got like all of Fedorov's prime. We didn't miss prime Fedorov. Yeah, he would have helped a bit in those late years. He was still a good player, but he wasn't like himself at that point. I think if we had Konstantinov, and I mean, we won in 98, but man, who knows what would have happened in 99, 2000, 2001.
Yeah. I love when Doug McLean was like, yeah, and Fedorov didn't reach his like full offensive prime. I was like, what else did you want from him? He was one of the most complete players the Red Wings have ever seen.
He won a Hart Trophy.
I was like, my God, Doug, your expectations maybe a bit touch high. Dylan Krill says, hey guys, in your opinion, what 3 teams have the best defensive core? And if the Red Wings swap defense with one of them, would the Red Wings be a playoff team next year? Thanks.
No.
Depending on the defensive core. So, God, the problem is it's been so long since we watched hockey. I'm legitimately forgetting. A first team that comes to mind is Carolina. I think they probably have the best defensive core between Hamilton, Pesce, Slavin. I'm forgetting some too, and I know that, but just those 3 alone make it really, really good. DeHaan went there, did he not? But yeah, Carolina's probably the top. I mean, I'd be remiss if I didn't at least honorable mention Nashville in this, because
those are the first 2 that came to mind.
But even Nashville's has weakened. It's still good, and it's still upper echelon, but it's not that like crazy elite crew that it used to be. St. Louis is obviously up there. With
Dallas, honestly, with Heiskanen and Klingberg.
Yeah, Dallas is definitely up there. So those are, I'd put Dallas and St. Louis ahead of Nashville actually now.
I do like a healthy Brent Burns and Erik Karlsson too. Yeah.
And Vlasic, but would I want that in Detroit when all of them are very much on the wrong side of 30? I think if I could swap with anybody, it would be Carolina. And I do think that makes the Red Wings a playoff team if Bernier keeps playing the way he did.
Yeah, if you give the Red Wings any one of those top 5 teams that we mentioned, then their defense is essentially set. What is the biggest issue? A second line center? Your depth isn't going to score.
The bottom 6.
Yeah. I think honestly that's a hot goaltender away from a playoff berth. And honestly, with these expanded playoffs, hell yeah, they'd be in.
Everybody makes it except for a few teams. You get the playoffs, and you get the playoffs.
Yeah. But like the MLB line proved this year, they can carry the game offensively pretty regularly, actually. So if Zadina doesn't get hurt, if the Fabry trade still happens, I mean, yeah, that's a respectable top 6. I mean, you'd have to play them each 30 minutes in a game, because the second that bottom 6 comes on, that defense, that elite defense is getting a workload. But
yeah, we're getting that mileage. Kyle Sanders says, hello, you trebuchet-loving fiends. Hockey isn't back yet, but I have a question related to it. Backstory, I'm dating a Leafs fan, but finding a girl who watches hockey in Southern Ontario who isn't a Leafs fan, who wants to date my lanky ass, is a tall order.
Fair enough.
Last part being very relevant.
We had tickets to the Wings Leafs game in March before I got shit canned. Anyways, she made the ultimate declaration last night that we were going to watch all of the Leafs games together. Since I've been deprived of hockey the way a waterboarded person is deprived of air, I'm on board for it. But I'm considering getting a Blue Jackets t-shirt. Jerseys are expensive, dude. Out of spite, so she knows which side of the ice I'm on. Should I pull the trigger and purchase one or not? Yeah, that or a shirt with just John Tortorella's face on it.
Nope. You got this all wrong. You want the Leafs to beat Columbus. What you need to do is get a Boston Bruins t-shirt and an Alexis Lafreniere t-shirt, so you can see what's going to beat the Leafs and what the Leafs aren't getting.
I'm happy I was on mute there so you guys couldn't hear me choking on my my drink as Brad said that. For those who are watching on YouTube, no, that's not like a fancy blue drink. That's literally just Gatorade to replenish my electrolytes. Sorry, I mean power drink, no free ads. Currently writing this before the Styrian Grand Prix, so I can't comment on that. So Ryan, sum up your top 5 favorite moments. Brad, feel free to chip in if you've hopped onto the bandwagon. If you're having trouble getting into it, the Netflix series is F1 Drive to Survive. It's a great introduction to the sport.
I'm sure it's a terrific documentary. I promise you, I'm not going to watch it.
P.S. Legalize ass eating. You can go ahead, Evan.
The one thing I realized about F1 for the brief moment I watched it on TV was how good the production is in terms of television watching. Like, they have camera angles everywhere on the cars, and it's like instant, and like they get you into the team's like comms and whatnot. Yeah. It's crazy. And like when there's problems with the cars, they have team members of those teams come on to the broadcast and give updates. Like, it's the viewing experience is unreal, and there's no other sport quite like it. I'll never watch F1.
It's funny because like if you ask a lot of F1 fans, they hate how it's presented. They have so many qualms with it. And like as a hockey fan, I'm like, yo, they're interviewing pretty much the head coach as his premier driver just had to retire from the race due to a crash. Like, that's amazing. Or like they have the team radio where they're like Lewis Hamilton is screaming or something. I'm like, you never get that with hockey. So it's funny, that perspective.
We just have the reporters like walking through the players on the bench, just putting the mic in front of the coach, and they're like, oh, hello. And it's awful.
Lonnie Zone says, hey guys, it was great to hear the interview with Doug McLean, and not only because it was a good reminder that we're not alone in feeling screwed by the draft lottery process, it made me think about the job of a GM too. As a fan, I think of a GM as a person whose job it is to put together the talent to eventually win a championship, but maybe I need to consider more the fact that they're managing a business that needs to make money. For example, I'm all for Brad's suggestion to not pick up any free agents, and the point that even the overpriced contracts would still make the team better anyway. But maybe that's not consistent with the team's plans to make a certain amount of money on for the season. It also probably explains the mandate placed on Holland to keep the team playoff viable, even as we saw the looming disaster we're coming as a result. It probably wasn't really about keeping the streak alive, perhaps for Mike Ilitch, but more likely about keeping a ticket-buying fan base engaged while moving into a pricey new building that would require revenue ASAP. Anyways, it's not something I think about the basic business side of the job, and I should probably do it more. Curious your thoughts, and thanks again for not only this awesome podcast, but this community you've built up. Glad to be a part of it. Oh, that last line made my heart smile. Thank you.
So it is funny you mention that, because one of the widely believed things with the GMs, why a lot of the NHL is cyclical with the same GMs going through, is because a lot of these guys are great at managing up, not down, dealing with the vice president, dealing with the owner. That was the big rumor about Peter Chiarelli. His hockey decisions were terrible, but apparently he was terrific at managing up, factoring in the finances, communicating with the owner, that kind of stuff. And yeah, we're sitting here and saying, it's easy to take on Louis Eriksson's contract. We should. But Chris Ilitch goes, I'm not giving you $12 million for a dead player. No, are you kidding me? That is very much in the realm of possibility. So we could have the greatest trade in the world in front of us, and Ilitch will go, no, we are not even close to selling out this rink. COVID's ruined everything. We are not throwing money away. And it's Steve Yzerman's job to then convince him, we'll take a hit over the next 2 years, but this move helps make us a winner. And it's not, you don't have to be a savvy business person to know when you're winning, the building is filled.
Yeah, and the point about anticipating the new arena is, I think, a really key one there. And it holds true. Like, it costs money. Not all private money, and that's a different story. But yeah, the Ilitches were definitely trying to build up to that as well. So ideally for them, this team would have been competitive by this point. But if they wanted that to be the case, they would have had to have had the foresight probably 5 years sooner than they did, because then this team might be coming out of a rebuild at the time where they just stepped into the new arena. Steve E says, hello. It seems that Pav that theory about being holed up in a Russian monastery was not true. He just signed an extension with his hometown team. Side topic, exercise and working out. I've been crushing it at home with nothing more than 2 40-pound dumbbells, a 70-pound kettlebell, 60-pound weight vest, and a heavy punching bag. What have you all done to stay in shape during quarantine? P.S. Brad, no complaining about being tired. I'm 32 with an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old and haven't worked less than 12 hours since March 6th. P.P.S. Thanks for continuing to turn out the content through the pandemic.
Listen, man, I never said I was the only one with 2 young kids here.
Well, you are here.
You are here. Brad, did you know Evan and I, between the two of us, have 0 kids?
Yes.
4 now. I'm just going to start throwing that in there at the end of every one until it comes.
Do it all you want, man. Mel and I are very much on the same page about this. She won't even get a cat. I keep trying to jokingly ask for a cat. I don't really want one, but I just think they're hilarious, and she won't even take that. Our dog's enough. To stay fit, not enough, man. I have not been doing enough.
I have a little boy body now because I can't work out at the gym, so I just look like a 14-year-old boy.
Little pudgy dumpling Buddha body.
Yeah, a little milk bag.
I worked for gyms for so long that I never invested in any home workout equipment. So I've basically had to limit myself to body weight stuff and cardio, which, for the record, I hate cardio more than I hate anything else on the face of this earth. So I've been doing a lot of inline because that makes it tolerable. And I mean, body weight, leg and core stuff mostly. Honestly, I don't have many other options. Plus, just follow Mika around for a day. That's all the cardio anybody needs. You have kids, you know.
Garrett TV says, Hockey Amigos, where do you stand regarding background noise during the fanless games? I really like the idea of silence so we can simply hear the raw play, but I've heard conversations from TSN folks about the idea of a little background music as well. I've also really warmed up to a light background music idea. How about fake fan noise? I'm vehemently against the fan noise idea. It kind of works in soccer as sort of white noise, but then again, every time there's a fake reaction to an exciting play, I just feel insulted by it. Really hoping for silence or music. Can't recall if we discussed this before. Everything is real, nothing is real, and time no longer exists. Oh, also I'd pay a not insignificant sum to have a ginger ale with Doug McLean and Mickey. Oh, but for the stories, let's go Red Wings.
I mean, I can't even comment. I don't know if I'll like it or not because on one hand, it feels weird that it'll be silent and it might be uncomfortable, or I might love it. I don't know. And filled in noise could be great. It could be terrible depending on how it's done. So I know this is a long lot of words for basically a non-answer, but yeah, I hope that they try everything in the play-in round. Just try it and see what works.
Yeah, I don't want to come out against it because I had the same experience where I heard a soccer game. I'm like, it actually worked okay, but soccer fan noise is a little bit different. Like, it's kind of white noise. I would always prefer to just hear the players on the ice, but I'm a weirdo like that.
For what it's worth, I think I saw a post on Twitter like 5 minutes before we started recording this where the Rangers, I believe it was, sent out a thing requesting their fans to send in videos like chanting Henrik, Henrik, or bread man, and a bunch of other things like that. So they clearly have a plan for what they want to do whenever the Rangers are deemed the home team in their game. But yeah, I'm curious. I am super curious.
Kara Y says, hey, hi guys, since my comment last week got not so mysteriously deleted, Ryan, I'm going to re-ask it. It was a legitimate question for once. I know you guys have been talking quite a bit about the salary cap, so hopefully you didn't cover this in the episode. With the cap space now being an even bigger issue for most teams, how do you think this affects players/free agents looking to sign generally inexpensive contracts? Examples, Perlini and Golubev, maybe a fourth-line Swedish centerman struggling to create cap space on a defending Stanley Cup champion roster. No one specific, just a hypothetical, of course. De La Rose. Obviously, cap space is extremely valuable, but do these players hold an advantage because they're cheaper, or do you think teams will look past players like this in favor of someone who brings more value to the team rather than using a precious cap space for a low-impact player?
I honestly don't know because I think it's fascinating. I keep looking at Taylor Hall and what's going to happen to him because he probably had dreams of a $10-11 million contract, and this lower cap, basically all but guarantees that will not happen. So I think teams are going to negotiate down from the top. So I don't think it's going to affect the fourth liners at all. I think it's more going to impact the guys at the top of the roster where the teams are going to be like, yeah, so we thought we'd have $12 million in cap space. Now we have $9 million. So sorry, Taylor, we will offer you $9 million.
I think you're ultimately going to see a benefit to those guys, like for two reasons. One, teams who have the cap space to kind of leverage into taking bad contracts, those aren't teams that are in a position to compete. So they're not trying to sign better free agents. They're more looking for warm bodies to fill. So they'll sign league minimum guys like De La Rose or N or whatever. Evan Lobsinger is probably going to be signed on for $800,000 pretty soon.
Yep. Confirmed. You heard it here first.
And I have an inside source. It's Evan's mom. She's lovely. Say hi to Martha, by the way. It's been a while.
Do.
The other side is like these cup contending teams are up against the cap. They're going to need players, but they won't be able to afford fancy ones because they have too many fancy ones already. So they're going to get league minimum guys. So yeah, I think ultimately it's going to benefit them. Jeremy Dahl says, "Hey, Winged Wheel boys, appreciate you getting Ryan to read our stuff here. It sure makes this personal and fun. So good news, the rad girl, who's Christian AF, he says, is letting me call her my girlfriend now. So this is an important question. Suggestions on how to get a girl with no interest in hockey into a shitty rebuilding team. She obviously has to become a Red Wings fan, so any tips or tricks into getting her interested, go ahead, use all of your cunning. Thanks, boys." Buy apparel, first of all, for emotional manipulation. That's always a good way to do it.
No negative energy. You got to treat this like I've been treating it with my kids. Because again, I have no shame admitting I will support my children in whatever they want to do in life, but I really want to get them in hockey. So when I'm watching the Red Wings, I will point out all the good things they do, and I will cheer super loud and over the top and act insanely happy when they score. And when they get scored on, it's just like stone face. Have that same attitude. Also, depending what she's into, if she likes UFC, show her Fight Night at the Joe. If she's super squeamish against fighting, just show her like skill highlights. Like, figure out what she likes, and like, YouTube's a thing. Cherry pick what she's exposed to.
Evan, is Kat a hockey fan?
Nope. But she'll do the things if we have to.
It's nice of her. Michael Barry says, "Hi guys, hope all is well. All right, Brad, Ryan, and Evan, feel free to chime in as well. Why do you have Lucas Raymond over Cole Perfetti? I know Lucas Raymond has better skating and is a really good defender, something Perfetti lacks for now. Just from my perspective, Perfetti's lack of speed and skating is made up by his thinking and ability to slow the game down. Also, I'm worried about Raymond's next level scoring ability while compared to Perfetti's shooting ability. Anyways, have a good one. P.S. Both players need to bulk up, but Perfetti more so."
Without getting into the nuances, I'll go for my two broad points. One, Lucas Raymond, longer track record. He has been dummying players much older than him in every international tournament he's played in. He dummied the Swedish Junior League when he was in it. It's hard to compare their seasons this year because, yeah, Perfetti had a better statistical season, but that's because the league Raymond was playing in was significantly better. And two, Raymond plays fast, and I'm a big fan of that. Like, it's a skill to be able to slow the game down like Perfetti does. So it's not necessarily a knock against him, but I always favor the player who can do all the things they do quickly, rapid response, high pace, high intensity. And I would almost argue there's not a player in this draft who does that better than Lucas Raymond. He's always moving out there. He's always trying to make something happen. He's always dancing around the ice. Like, again, I know it's simplistic and I don't love player comparisons, but like the more I watch Lucas Raymond, the more I see Mitch Marner. So when you have that combination of skill, processing ability, and being able to do it quickly, always gets the edge in my book.
Honestly, the points that you made, Michael, in that post are exactly why I'm kind of like diving back into the books clips, but you know what I mean, about this, because those are they're fair points. And I think the biggest one for me that could flip Perfetti up in my mind is the whole pace of play thing. If he really is that skilled at slowing the game down and can adjust at the NHL level with that, because he'll have to rely heavily on his skill to be able to do that, because the NHL is not a forgiving league in terms of giving time and space. And we saw that when Philip Zadina came into the league, because he did not have the time he needed to shoot initially. But if he can translate that at the NHL level, yeah, that does bump him up a lot in my mind. Because the way he thinks the game is fantastic. But my initial inclination, like Brad said, to have skill and to have pace and to be able to combine those two things, it's almost one of those foolproof things where, like Evan mentions this a lot. It's one of those attributes where it's going to translate at the NHL level. Like by all rights, unless something goes terribly wrong, like that's something that's kind of like NHL proof. But subject to change, of course. RC Tendy says, red seats or black seats, people are going to point out how empty the arena is. However, the red seats were so much better. Now would be the perfect time for the LCA to do what's right and put the red seats back in. They have the time since the schedule's empty. If you want to sign the petition, visit my Twitter page and follow the link from the pinned tweet. Maybe if enough people sign, they'll follow through. I think I retweeted it from the podcast account as well. Steve Lang says, hey gents, first thank you for continuing the pod full time while the world falls apart. We were already in hard times as Wings fans, so seriously thank you for feeding our hockey/Red Wings passions during all of this. Much appreciated. Because of that, I'm a first time Patreon supporter. Hey Steve, welcome to the Dub Dub family and thank you for the support. I've been listening since last summer and happy to finally start supporting. Wish I can give you guys more, but I need that cash for my weekly golf rounds. Evan will know what that's like. That totally understand, just by way of Evan. I wanted to ask about the Jack Eichel Buffalo situation from a few weeks ago and compare a situation to Stevie Y. My namesake, by the way. Oh, nice. And the Dead Wings. Everyone is talking about how terrible of a position Buffalo's in and how Jack is an elite player, deserves to move to a better team since he's given so much to them through his early career. How does his situation compare to Stevie Y's when he was drafted by a terrible Red Wings team? They were both great players and leaders coming into the league / their team, so why do people think that Jack deserves to be on a better team? Do people say that about Stevie, or is this just an outcome of how the time and game has changed since over the years?
Oh, yeah. Stevie was almost traded straight up for Alexei Yashin in the early 90s. Believe me, this happened to Yzerman. It's not uncommon. The only real difference between now and back then was time. Players were under team control for a lot longer in the 80s and 90s than they are now, because now it's Jack Eichel, I know he signed the extension, but for the most part, teams only control a player for 7 years. But Eichel obviously signed an 8-year extension, so they got a few extra years out of him. But Stevie couldn't have left the Red Wings outside of a trade until his 30s. So patience was an option for him, whether he wanted it or not, because he did not hold any cards in that scenario. Eichel holds a lot of the cards, so, it's just the changing of the times.
Steve goes on to say, from my point of view, for young leaders, elite players like Jack and Stevie, there's an unspoken code in the game for draft loyalty. Then if their team never turns around or reaches a cup throughout their career, they can pull the Ray Bourque / Dominic Hasek move and spend their last few years with the contender solely to get their cup, as those great players at that point deserve to do. I just don't think Jack is anywhere near that point. Thanks again, boys, and let's go Red Wings. Hassam Al-Qassem says, I've never been more excited for August, usually my least favorite month because no hockey. Also, the person who put together the Doug McLean interview. So thank you for linking us. Shout out to Hassam for that one. I've been meaning to do that. We lost it in an audio loss on one episode, and then I've forgotten twice now. So thank you for reminding me. And this also doesn't count. I will give it to you, give you a proper shout out at the beginning of an episode soon. But Hassam, thank you. If you guys want someone to come on the Winged Wheel podcast, tweet at them, or if you know someone, shoot them a message. That's mostly how this stuff happens. So thank you for that. C-Nod says, hey guys, thanks for getting my question. I agree about 15 is where I'd put Hronek as well. However, you didn't answer the second question. That's hypothetical. If we pick Drysdale and he pans out, would we see Hronek on the move since his stock is really high right now? Other than that, give us a mid to late round Red Wings pick over the last 2 or 3 years that we're pretty high on. We need some of those to hit to move the rebuild along. Thanks for the great podcast.
No, we will not move Hronek because we don't have enough defensemen. We have to keep the good ones. We don't have the luxury of not. And mid to late round pick that we're high on, I'm still on the Robert Mastrosimone bandwagon until he does something to prove otherwise.
What else? Let me think of last draft. Not Grava. Carter Guylander's a 7th round pick who could turn out as a goalie.
Soderblom,
yeah, is another really good one.
Johansson.
Yep.
Cooper Moore had a pretty decent season in the BC.
Cooper Moore is one of those ones. He was drafted in the 5th, and he was drafted from high school. And he was one where the U.S. scouts were like really banging the table for him. So that's one that still could have some potential to be like a huge steal. Joseph Fournier says, choo choo, all aboard the Mason Raymond train. Oh, wait a minute. Let me check my notes. Oh, crap. Stay fresh cheese bags. That's going to mess me up. I'm already mixing up Alex Holtz and Raymond Holtz. So Chris Smith says Lucas Raymond, fact, in 2019, Raymond scored 3 goals, including the OT winner in the under 18 gold medal game. To make that more impressive, those goals were scored against Yaroslav Askarov, who some scouts say is the best goalie prospect since Carey Price. Make a trade make sense for Brock Boeser for me. I love Bessie on the wings, but I don't think he would take us out of the bottom of the league. But it would be nice to have a guy play with Zadina that isn't Geo Smith. I'm sure we would have taken on all their bad contracts, but that still probably wouldn't be enough, right? Let me down easy. Well, we talked about it earlier, and it would make the team better, and you're going to look for incremental moves to make this team better. It's not going to be a silver bullet. So that's the argument in favor.
So if you want to use all stuff that's very tangible right now, I would say a Boeser trade right now would be Brock Boeser and Louis Eriksson for pick 32 and Jared McIsaac would be our best case scenario.
James Phoenix says, good day, lads. Well, my football team in England narrowly missed out on promotion, having played for them a bit way back in the day, so a tough week. Plus, after much deliberation, I believe that Lucas Raymond could well go to 3 to Ottawa if he starts hot in the SHL, and Stützle will drop to us at 4. Just a feeling. Anyway, on to more important topics. Who is your most underrated favorite Red Wing going back max of 30 years? Mine are Slava Kozlov, who is so unbelievably talented, but was totally overshadowed in the company he kept. Maltby, who played hard and gritty, got under the skin of many, and scored some huge goals for us. Maltz blocking 3 shots without a stick back in 2002 against St. Louis on the way to the Cup is a great memory of mine, watching him as a kid, and epitomized the way he played.
I'm going 2007 to 2011 Valtteri Filppula.
My favorite player of all time is Brendan Shanahan, and I think people forget that he was one of the last true power forwards in my mind. Larionov, I think it's easy for people to forget why he was called a professor. I feel like we talk about like the Red Wings almost like all, like I don't think there's a Red Wing that we've underrated because that's all we really talk about. I don't know, Ivan, who's your most underrated favorite Red Wing? Going back 30 years at most.
Oh my God. Putting me on the spot. I was reading up about something with Warrior hockey. No free ads though. Underrated. I feel like Kirk Maltby probably gets underrated. He's kind of third fiddle on the grind line a little bit. Maybe even Chris Osgood, even though I've been on the other side of the fence a long time. But yeah, maybe Chris Osgood. You're
winning some fans with that one. Lastly, what's your go-to out of Indian, Chinese, Italian, or Thai food? I'm a sucker for a well-made chicken tikka madras and mushroom saffron rice as it goes. Cheers, boys, as always, and continue to trust the Iser plan. And hashtag play up Pompey.
Oh, that's tough. I'm torn between Indian and Thai, but there's this one really good Thai restaurant near my place here, so tiebreaker goes to the closest option.
The tiebreaker?
Oh yeah, buddy.
There's a lot of crossover between Indian food and the Middle Eastern food I grew up on. Not like totally, but enough where it's like I love it, but I'll always value getting something a little bit more unique. I just love a good pasta. My favorite restaurant in like the town that we're in is like a little hole in the wall Italian restaurant. So that's it for me.
I think if all things are equal, I'm probably Indian food. For some reason, it's regardless of where I get it, it's always way too spicy, but it's just so good that I'm drenched in sweat. I sweat when I have spicy food. I'm just drenched in sweat, but I'm like, it's so hot, I can't eat anymore, but it's so good that I keep eating. It's terrible, but it's just so good.
Is your spice tolerance really low, or like kosher salt is a bit too much for you?
I used to have really good spice tolerance, and then maybe a couple of years ago I just lost it, but I still eat spicy food. I'm like, it's still so good, but I just sit there sweating, literally just drenched in sweat.
Darren Helms, Stan Club Stan says, good day, Dud Duds. Conspiracy theory time. The Montreal 0-4s have had multiple players test positive for COVID-19, and they are wisely keeping Max Domi away for now. This is clearly a deliberate ploy to ensure they get a 12.5% chance at that Alex Laferriere wannabe. Don't try and debunk this either. Remember last week when someone asked you what was the most Canadian thing you've ever done, and literally none of you said made a podcast about hockey? Oh, wow. Yeah. No one ever accused us of being smart. Oh yeah, hockey. Which lower ranked play-in team do you think has the best chance to go deep into the playoffs? Please show your workings.
The New York Rangers have the deepest goaltending and an insane group of forwards if their defense can just be competent, which is a big ask for that group. But if they can, I mean, between Zibanejad and Panarin and Kreider and everybody else in that forward group, they could make some noise. And it only takes one of Shesterkin, Georgiev, or Lundqvist to get hot.
I'll give that one to New York as well, purely for the reason of having three high-end goaltenders. The biggest thing the biggest asset you can have as a playoff team who's making a run for the cup is a hot goalie. So if you have three shots at that, even better. Plus, they'll have to get past Carolina, right?
And they swept the season series against Carolina.
And Carolina's no joke, so that's a great proof of concept for them. I won't say Chicago. I won't say Minnesota. I won't say Arizona.
I could see Arizona.
The Jackets, maybe, but that's, I think, a little bit more of me just wanting them to go far.
Well, they're the 9 seed, so yeah.
Jersey time, not sure if you'll genuinely have an answer here, but favorite jersey manufacturer over time? Nike. I'll never forgive Reebok for piping, and I always have an aversion to the current jersey manufacturer because of one reason or another, so I'll probably be a little harsh on Adidas. Although I don't mind the dimpled shoulders, but yeah, I think Nike is the classic for me.
Yeah, I'm not thinking of any reason to dethrone Nike. Reebok was responsible for the piping apocalypse, so they go to hell for that. Adidas, I don't mind. I for the most part liked what they've done. So in a few years I could see them overtaking Nike for me, but Nike was responsible for the silly season we had in the 90s. So I'll always appreciate that.
Okay, we have time for some Reddit comments here. This one's from B Nags, says, hey guys, new listener to the podcast, so I'm not sure if you've covered this in the past. Well, welcome to the show, and hope you enjoy it. Curious what your thoughts are on Giovanni Smith. Can he be a guy like Bertuzzi and come in and make a big impact, or is he probably just another fourth liner? Never paid much attention to him, but he looks good with the Griffins, especially with the highlights I've been watching lately. My read on Giovanni Smith is, before I had him probably pegged as a career AHLer who just popped up from time to time. He worked a lot on his skating, which was probably his biggest downside. And with what I saw from him this year, I think he can staple himself into the bottom of the Red Wings roster as like a really solid energy guy who can maybe do some things. I don't think he'll be a Bertuzzi type. He doesn't have that kind of offensive talent, but I don't think it's anything to scoff at someone who's a good fourth liner on this team, because though this team has a lot of fourth liners, not all of them are necessarily even good at that.
Yeah, before this season, I didn't think of him much as thought for a regular NHLer. I'm still on the low end of that, but yeah, I think I don't know if I think now he could be a good fourth liner because I think he could be a good fourth liner in the NHL, or just because this team has really brought down my expectation as to what a fourth liner is.
From Russell 18 says, what would you think about taking on Derek Stepan's contract from Arizona? He could have a reasonable impact and be a good center between Zadina and Fabry, and we'd still likely receive a pick/prospect in exchange for taking that $6.5 million on.
How many years left?
I will look that up for you now.
6.5 is doable. I like the player, and if it's anything more than 2 years, it's going to be a no.
Yeah, I definitely like the player, but it all comes down to term here. Sorry, I'm just going to look up Arizona. What is going on? Oh, they have the highest. Jeez, they have no cap space. Derek Stepan, this year and next. I would happily take that on.
Oh, yeah. Time. But Arizona's probably trying to make a run the next 2 years, so I don't see them giving up a player that could help.
Okay, Evan, pick a number from 1 to 5.
5.
Cross Crease Pass says, welcome to, or remember the Nyquist hype in 2014? Good memories. Gus looked like a rising star. He still turned out to be a solid top 6 guy, but I wonder how things would have turned out if he met those early expectations. Gus Nyquist would have a much more prominent career and would be remembered a lot more fondly. Not that he's not looked back on fondly. It hurt when Gus got traded. But if he was part of that like 02 to 09 Red Wing team, oh man, he would have had all the talent in the world to play with.
Imagine what Gus Nyquist could have been if Mike Babcock never coached the Red Wings. I still will never forgive the team for how they mishandled him early in his career. And then he finally comes up, absolutely pops off, and then still plays on the second line, reduced minutes, with some voting. It was disappointing.
With that, we're going to wrap up this episode. I'm sorry if we couldn't get your question, but it is Brad's bedtime. We'd like to thank all of our listeners, our patrons. Thank you all so much for supporting the show. Our name level sponsors, the septic tank of that bitch, Carol Baskins, Greach, Jeremiah Dobo, Jake Kiefer, Drunky the Dwarf, Arjun Shankar, Brad Smith, Andrew Bohan, Scott Martin, Jacob Turner, Matt McKay, Brandon M., Matthew M. Rice, Luke Johnson, Clayton Van Dyken, Kalen Wood, Hassam Al-Qassem. Thank you again, man. Charlie Elkins, Hannah Lee, Birthday Boy Trev, Chris Ripley, Alex Ott, Ashley Van Conant, Chris Frank, Connor Leighton, Danny Jr., Matthew Keeler, Simon Anderson, Antonio Gracias, John Evans, Kay Waz, Stan Olson. Thank you all so much. I hope I'm around for next episode. I'll see you then.
Thanks for tuning in to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Be sure to check out wingedwheelpodcast.com, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll also find links to other ways to support the show, such as Patreon, official podcast apparel, and more. And don't forget to follow the show on Twitter at Winged Wheel Pod. And of course, the hosts at Brad Crisco, at Ryan Hanna WWP, and at Hockey Town Evan.